All right, welcome back with a quick little preview here in my little mini preview series that I've been doing, covering each and every region's upper division for this upcoming tour, where I go through each and every team in this division. I talk about some of the roster changes that they've had since the start of the first tour, and in case you guys missed it, give you guys a brief little update on that, and also talking about each and every team and some of the things that I'm hoping to see from them in this upcoming tour, some of the things that they maybe struggled with that I'm hoping that they improve upon, or maybe if they were doing something very well, stuff that I'd love to see them continue on. And just in general, having a nice discussion about a bunch of these teams in which I would love to hear you guys' opinion on. I just recently did my China one. I just uploaded it right before this one, and I also did my Western Europe one a few days ago. And after this video, I'm going to be doing my week 1 preview for the lower divisions matches for the next week. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be doing North and South America's upper division, as well as my upper division preview, which is going to include my fantasy picks. So if you guys want to know my fantasy picks, feel free to tune into that tomorrow. But kicking things off, we are now on to Southeast Asia, which starts in just about a day from now. So very, very exciting. Kicking things off, we have Boom leading the way so far, and they are one of only 3 teams that won both the regional portion of the first tour as well as the regional finals. However, due to the fact that they did make some roster changes, they took a pretty hefty hit onto their DPC point stats, so they are currently not tied for first place, even though they won both of the parts of their first tour. They're currently sitting at 382.5 points after suffering a 167.5 point deduction after bringing on Jackie. And the reason that that point deduction was so hefty, typically it's only about 15% once you get rid of a player from your roster, but not only did they get rid of a player, but when they brought Jackie on to play in those regional finals, he was considered as a substitute at that point, meaning that all of the points that they earned for that regional finals was going to be automatically deducted by 40% because they had a stand-in. So they suffered basically 2 separate deductions, and now they are currently sitting at just under 400 points, which even with this hefty deduction, they're still far and ahead of a lot of other teams in this DPC so far. So hefty change, but hopefully it ends up being one that pays off, and so far it does definitely look like one. And that, of course, being Jackie being added to the position 1 role after the first part of the first tour. We still have Yopaj, FBZ, Tims, and Skem on the team, of course, being coached by Mushi, which is 100% a huge part of why this team has been having so much success. Again, keep in mind, these guys were supposed to be in the lower division for the first tour, and now they're the top team in Southeast Asia currently. I've actually had a poll on my channel a few days ago asking you guys, who do you guys think the MVP of this team is? And that you guys pretty much all said Yopaj. And of course, I don't think I can really argue that or deny that. Yopaj has been playing some of the best Dota in the world these past few months. However, I think I should have made a separate poll asking you guys who the most underrated player on this team is, because FBZ really is amazing. And some of the things that he's been able to do in these series, specifically on his Pangolier, who hasn't been as popular as a hero in this past tour, has been phenomenal, and I have been endlessly impressed by his performance, and he's a big reason as to why Boom has been having so much success, and I really don't think he gets as much appreciation as he should. So I just thought I would throw that in there. Other than that, again, every single player on this team is playing fantastic. I think the only weak point they had in the first part of the first tour was Tino, and with that change that they've made now bringing in Jackie, they look pretty unstoppable. So we'll see how they do in the next tour. All they've got to do is stay consistent, and they'll be finding themselves at TI 11, which will be very exciting. Following that, we have T1, who also suffered a pretty hefty amount of point deductions, the exact same amount of point deductions percentage-wise, where they had 15% removed due to the kicking of 23 Savage, and then another 40% removed from their earnings at the regional finals due to the fact that Gabby was playing as a stand-in. So currently, they're sitting at 168.3 DPC points and suffered a 81.7 point deduction. And again, that looks like a lot, and that is a pretty hefty deduction there, but they are still pretty far ahead of a lot of other teams, and as long as they're able to stay consistent with how they've played this past tour, they should still be finding themselves at TI. However, I just wanted to point out some of the few things that I'm excited to watch with T1. First of all, of course, Gabby. We got to see him for a little bit in the regional finals in Southeast Asia, and I thought he was playing quite well. I'm hoping that he just continues to get better with time. I think the rest of T1 is still playing some of their best Dota so far. Carl has been playing fantastic as well. I know that there was that one game in the grand finals where he wasn't there, and you could really feel that he wasn't in that game. And that was still a very, very very good mid laner replacing him in Lelich from Polaris, but still. I think this team is playing fantastic. And again, if they can maintain this consistency that they've had and maybe start to overcome some of the other teams in this division, like Boom, who they were able to beat earlier on in the tour, I think they should no doubt be making it to TI. Following that, we have Fnatic, who, despite the fact that they do not finish in the top 2 in the regional finals, they currently sit higher than T1 in the points column with 180, just again because they didn't have to suffer through a bunch of point deductions because they didn't make any roster changes. And with Fnatic, I think this team is a lot stronger than they ended up finishing, and these guys were really starting to build up a whole lot of momentum the further we got into the first tour. They started off their tour quite poorly, if you guys remember. Granted, they were playing against some of the stronger teams, but it felt like the more time passed, the better Fnatic was playing, and I'm just so excited to see how they end up doing in this next tour. If this does happen to have a traditional major cycle, you will have to finish in the top 3, and I can definitely see Fnatic being in that top 3 quite easily. Although, maybe not easily, because we do have one other team in this division who is right there up to the end as well, and that is currently SMG, who are sitting at 51 DPC points right now after suffering a 9-point deduction after kicking Raj and bringing in Ninja Boogie. So he's going to be playing position 5. We now have a good portion of the old Mineski from TI9, which was a fantastic era for the team. I think now we just need, who do we need? We need KP to join the team and Nico Baby, and then we've got the whole stack together. But SMG, sure, they kind of fell flat near the end of the tour. They were unable to win their matches in the tiebreakers, and they ended up finishing 4th place. And then they struggled to start to get going in the regional finals, again finishing 4th place. However, this is a very tough division, and we saw in the first tour that the top half of this division is insanely strong and insanely closely skilled, closely matched, whereas the bottom half of the division was also very close, but not anywhere near those top teams. And so SMG, I'm just hoping that they can keep up with the rest of the pack. I hope they do not start to slip and fall behind a little bit, as I think that these guys do have a realistic opportunity of making it to the major. You know, there's only 3 slots, but the chance that one of these 3 teams has a bit of a weak start and SMG gets off to a good one, they get themselves ahead, I don't think it's an impossibility. And so I'm hoping, again, they can kind of just keep up with the teams ahead of them and not start to slip down the rankings. I'm sure that they're hoping that this change that they made by bringing in Ninja Boogie ends up being one that helps them, and so am I. So we'll see how they do in this upcoming tour. I'm very excited, and in general, I think a lot of the members on the team have been playing quite fantastic. I think that was a pretty rough series that they had in the regional final, specifically for Mid1, who was playing a lot of Morphling, and this isn't me trying to flame him. It was more just a series of unfortunate events where he would play Morphling, he would waveform in, and he would just happen to waveform right as FBZ was rolling up on Pango or something, and so he would just go into the fog and just be immediately stunned. And it wasn't even like FBZ was predicting it, or at least it really felt kind of like that wasn't possible, but it was pretty unfortunate for Mid1. So I'm hoping that that was just a set of unfortunate events that they can now put behind them and they can improve upon from there. Now moving on to the back half of this division, and again, as I mentioned, the bottom half of these teams in the first tour were very close to one another. They were all pretty much at 2 wins or less, which was not very much at all. One of those teams being OB.Neon, who actually got off to a pretty miserable start, despite the fact that they were having a pretty reasonable amount of success outside of the DPC. And due to their troubles in the DPC, I think it was pretty inevitable that they were going to be having some roster changes. They did have 3 players leaving their team, which is a pretty hefty amount. They're bringing in Asta, Avatar Mode, and Jing to play their positions, and on average, they're not all of their point deductions are not equal, but on average, they lost about 12 points from their original 30. They're currently sitting at about 18.5 points, which is not a lot. They would obviously need much more to make it to TI, but I'm really hoping that they can kind of turn this around, as, again, their last tour was pretty rough, despite the fact that, again, they were having a lot of success outside of the DPC, but they weren't able to replicate it where it mattered. Next up on the list, we have Exec, who also went through their fair share of roster changes. However, I think theirs has a little more of a bright side to it, bringing in a lot of familiar faces that had a lot of success in the previous tour. Players like Palos, Tino, and Shanks continuing to play with Bob and RR, who are sticking around. No coach as of right now for Exec, but I'm sure that these guys are just looking for a bounce back. They finished 6th place in the last tour. They end up with absolutely 0 DPC points, and even if this does end up being a roster change that helps them, maybe they finish a little bit higher, I don't really see them finishing in the top 3. I don't see them making it to the major, which is pretty unfortunate to say, but that just also just goes to show how strong those top 3 teams, those top 4 teams in this division are. It is incredibly tough to catch up to them, and so we'll see if Execration is able to do it. The good thing about the fact that they made a bunch of changes is that they had 0 points, so they didn't lose any points for the changes that they made. So who knows? Maybe that ends up being a good thing. All right, now moving on to the 2 teams coming in from the lower division. 2 teams that I'm very, very excited for just to see where they end up placing in this division, which again has been very polarizing. You're either a top team or you're a bottom team. And these teams in the lower division were top teams through and through. These guys went pretty much undefeated, only losing matches to one another in this past tour. Polaris coming in with Natsumi, Lelich, who, like I mentioned earlier, stood in for T1 when Carl was unable to play in the grand finals. And so if that kind of put a sour taste in a bunch of you guys' mouths because he played for T1 and he wasn't as good as Carl, just know that Lelich is a very, very good mid player. And I hope that you guys end up seeing that in the following tour, as he was one of my favorite mid laners to watch in that lower division of Southeast Asia. Position 3, we've got Force, Xavius on position 4, and Mavis on position 5. They're currently running with no coach, but it doesn't seem to have mattered all that much. These guys were just so far ahead of the game. Again, this is a lower division, sure, but it was featuring teams like Talon, who had that name recognizability, a lot of really good players who were still playing quite good Dota. These guys were able to beat them. So I'm hoping to see an impressive showing from them. I'm hoping that they can edge themselves into this division and not fall into the lower division once again. Same thing goes for Nigma Galaxy SEA, who as an org now has 2 teams in the upper division, which is very, very exciting. And they're 2 teams that are both very dynamic to watch. Obviously, one of them has a much bigger fan base, a much more polarizing fan base. But this team here is still one that I'm very excited to watch, especially because it's a meepo patch. I love meepo, all right? Sue me. But these guys have a player, Alacrity, who plays meepo. I'm hoping that EG, also Abed, if Abed does not play meepo, Bulba, I swear to God, I'll be bad. But Nigma Galaxy is coming in from the lower division. Again, a very impressive showing from pretty much everyone on this roster, specifically In Your Dream. I was consistently topping the GPM and XPM charts in my review series that I was doing for Southeast Asia. And so I'm hoping that they can consistently bring that performance and, again, get themselves ahead of some of these teams here that are going to get off to maybe a bit of a slower start due to the amount of roster changes that they had to make. Again, I don't know how likely it is that they make it into the top 4 just because of how good these teams are, but I'm just hoping that the more time that they spend in the upper division, the more that they improve and the more we get to watch them, and maybe then they'll make it to the top 4, maybe then they make it to the major. And who knows, I've seen crazier, but maybe they make it to TI. But yeah, anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Feel free to let me know in the comments, who do you guys think wins this division? And I know the front runner right now is Boom, and for good reason. They've been playing very, very well. They even had a good showing at the Dubai Invitational, specifically off of the back of Yopaj, who, again, won everyone's heart over. I still love my boy FBZ, though. He's been playing fantastic. Underrated player, I'll say it again. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be having my preview for week 1 of the lower division going up after this video. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys very soon.